I've presented this several times, and when Bob asked me if it was okay to record today, I said, of course, because every time I do this, it's different. And the reason is that every time I do it, time has passed and things have happened, and I've learned something new, and I've met someone new, and I've realized something new. And so this is a very agile presentation. It's that continuous improvement, right? But so the slides here are from the first time that I presented it at Dreamforce, which was 2017. Is that right? Oh, God.
It is, Melissa.
Good. Yeah, somebody else remember for me, because I don't know about you all, but COVID has really changed my view on timelines. The three questions, three challenges that we want to address today, right? And talk about how we can be more intentional about leaving our microphone on and asking our allies to help us be heard. And so, giving up our mute button. I know a lot of times that we're asked specifically to be on mute, especially it seems like in what I call the time of COVID, and everybody's like, oh yeah, okay, let's all get online, but then be on mute because we're recording and we don't want children and dogs and fire trucks, going by. And, but before COVID, I think we did that instinctively anyway too. So I'm going to share a fast introduction of myself and the background of where Am I on Mute really originated. And then we're going to spend a few minutes talking about these questions in particular. And then the goal at the end of the day is for you to be able to walk away with at least one tool that you can use, right? So my name is Melissa Hill Dees. I was in a meeting today and someone's name they had listed as V. And they were like, wouldn't you like to type in your whole name? And she said, that's what I'm called, is V. My name's Virginia, but I'm known by V. So I don't really go by Melissa Hill Dees, but people tell me that I'm referred to that way. So, so I guess it was a good choice of sticking with it. I've been, many years in the making, but so has the lack of diversity and the lack of equality and equity in the tech universe. In fact, so this picture of a team at IBM was made the year I was born. So I told y'all we would have to talk about age today. And I think it's pertinent, not only from the standpoint of where I came from, but also the standpoint of, another way that we forget about diversity and inclusion is in ages. You're too young, you're too old, that's why I've colored my hair for the last 4 years, because I don't want anyone in the tech world to think that I'm too old to be innovative, right? Not that unconscious bias. So this team, you see, was pretty limited. Obviously, they're in the tech capabilities. But the paradigm shift from that day, right, when my brilliant mother, who incredibly smart, her ambition in life was to be an old maid school teacher, right? Because at that point in time, you couldn't be a mother and a professional. So she taught me, literally, and raised me to believe that I could be anything I wanted to be. A doctor or a lawyer, anything. So, I grew up, watching the Jetsons and Star Trek, and I'm still waiting on the flying car. We're not there yet. 1979, right, is the year I graduated from high school. And this was a team from Microsoft that year. So we've gone from one woman who was almost undoubtedly like a secretarial to two, right? So we doubled our representation. And in 1979, armed with a 32 on my ACT and a perfect score on the math, my counselors are like, okay, you need to do computer science, you need to go to college, blah, blah, blah. And so in 1979, I really believed that computers were the way to go, that we were making such great strides forward. And of course, it was an era when being a nerd was not a cool thing, not like now. But I believed that that's where we were going to be able to change the world. I learned to write COBOL and Fortran, wander around with a stack of punch cards. Does anybody know what punch cards? Yeah, okay, good. Because most people are like, what? Don't fold, spindle, or mutilate, right? That's what they said. But by the mid 90s, in fact, not very far through university, I realized I was being taught to be a programmer. I was taught to be a developer. And that was not what I wanted to do. I liked people. I didn't want to be in a dark little cave all by myself somewhere writing code. And so I switched my major to marketing and got into sales and wound up not even finishing university because I was making big money and having great fun. And ironically, the mid 1990s saw the peak numbers of women in tech, right? Before they started to decline dramatically. So this picture you see here is just a random page from the graduating class in computer science at Stanford that year. So again, we not sure what happened there. In fact, there's been a lot of research done and why the numbers started declining on women being in tech, but the mid 90s is when that became very evident. So fast forward, over the course of the next 20 years, so the dot-com bubble burst. I actually became a stay-at-home mom. Then I wound up working with nonprofits, with Habitat for Humanity and Points of Light, United Way. 2008, of course, the recession reshaped so many landscapes. Salesforce and Amazon.com launched and grew exponentially, and the world had changed so significantly, right? So this, in 2016, was my wonderful and amazingly diverse team. Our founders are both immigrants. We have the minority business, certification for our business, and diverse in gender and in age and in backgrounds. And so I was so excited to come to work for this company. What could possibly go wrong? So this is a true story, and I always say the names have been changed to protect the guilty, but that's really not true because I use their real names because they know who they are. And everybody on our team has always worked remotely, so working from home is not a new thing for us. We've always done that. And this is how we've conducted our team meetings, right? Video conferencing. Although before COVID, and I don't know about you all, but before COVID, we never turned our cameras on. Suddenly now, it's like everybody has to see everybody. I don't know where that came from, but that was a little bit startling. So we're all pretty strong people with pretty vocal and unique gifts and talents and perspectives, right? One day we were in a meeting and the discussion turned to some challenge that customers were having with our application. And how are we going to solve this? And I spoke up, offered a solution, and the conversation just proceeded as if I had never said a word. And I was just incredulous. I mean, I had no idea. So I literally, and Libby's here today, she can, back me up on this, literally texted Libby and I'm like, am I on mute? I thought, maybe I had accidentally put myself on mute. And she was like, no, I mean, she too is incredibly questioning what in the world is going on. And so as I started to think about it and how to approach this, because I'm the person that I don't want to come to you with a problem unless I can at least start to have a solution to think about. Evidently, it's a more common refrain than you would imagine. So I hope that this little video will work. I'm going to share this with you. See if you got sound here.
What you want to do, mate, you want to get an old screwdriver, get it in behind there and, force the lock up like that.
No, you wreck the door. You want to get a coat hanger and put it down and then try and pop it up.
Yeah, I thought of that, but there's nothing for it to get hold of.
You a member of the AA?
No, we'll smash a window.
Listen, I know what to do. You get a tennis ball, cut it in half, and then put it over the lock, and then smash it with the palm of your hand, and the air pressure forces the lock up. There's a sports shop just round the corner.
Oh, I got it. I know. You want to get a tennis ball, cut it in half, right? Put the half over the lock there, give it a little tap with the palm of your hand, and the air pressure pops the whole lock up. You're in. Bingo.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a sports shop just round the corner.
Problem solved. Right. I'll tell you what, though.
Can any of you actually hear me?
And so we laugh about that, of course. But the sad thing is that it happens, right? And as I began to look at this and how it happens, it became evident pretty quickly that they really didn't hear me. I didn't have to be on mute. My team just wasn't hearing me. They were used to working together in a specific group, and they just didn't hear me. So as I explored more, thought about the fact that sometimes we really are on mute, right? And I don't know if you noticed, but the next time you're in a meeting, look and see who sits there in the meeting on mute and who sits there throughout the whole meeting, never mutes themselves. And I don't know about you, but I'm not smart enough or fast enough to get unmuted usually in time to make the pertinent point, say what I want to say, take care of business in a way that I want to do that. So the very first and easiest thing to do is don't sit there on mute. Your opinion's important and it needs to be heard. So don't make sure that you're not trying to unmute yourself to be able to be heard. How many of you do that? Do you sit in the meeting on mute? And I know you all are there now, but yeah, I've gotten to where I don't do that. I think we're, as women, sometimes we don't want to cause a problem. You know, we don't want the dog to bark. We don't want to, have the kid, especially now, with everybody's kids home and everything going on. So we mute so that we are not a distraction. But then it becomes a problem when we try to get unmuted. The second thing is, are your colleagues on mute, right? So one of my brilliant teammates, she has improved tremendously, but she used to always be on mute. And I think some of it may have to do with imposter syndrome. If you haven't seen Amy Oplinger's presentation on imposter syndrome, am I on mute and that go hand in hand. In fact, we presented back to back at Dreamforce. So I talked to another young woman who said that she just got tired of trying to be heard, so she would put herself on mute. The sad thing is, my daughter is now 17, and she had just turned 16 when I first presented this. And she said, it happens all the time. She said, it's 10 times worse if you're young and a girl. So a couple of years ago, a question came up in her civics class regarding George W. Bush's brother's name. And the teacher asked, what's George W. Bush's brother's name? Well, and you know what answer they wanted, right? Yes? And Sarah Caitlin said, Neil. And the teacher told her that she was wrong, that he didn't have a brother named Neil, that his brother's name was Jeb. And she stood her ground and said, he did indeed have a brother named Neil. My mom has met him. And so the teacher had effectively muted her. He was not willing to admit that maybe that student knew something that he didn't know, right? So I sent this picture to school with her the next day to speak up on her behalf, because I didn't know if the teacher would ever believe her. I didn't know if he would ever Google and see that Neil, who's the president of the board for the Points of Light Foundation, actually existed. So that's an important part of how we can support each other, right? Sometimes it's easier for me to be indignant and loud on your behalf than on my own behalf. And so that teammate that is often on mute, she knows more about and has worked longer with our customers than anyone else on the team. So now I call her out by name to make sure that we hear her insights and experience. Libby, who's on the call, who's there in the center of the screen, is absolutely brilliant when it comes to data. She does things with data that most people only dream about. So when she speaks to a point or suggests a solution, my goal is always just to reiterate what she said. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, wow, Libby, thank you for clarifying exactly what needs to be done. So another simple way to make diverse voices heard is just as simple as retweeting. If you know Kim Shafkus, who's now with Salesforce.org, she is one of those phenomenally gifted people who helps others learn Salesforce concepts. She's the reason that I was ever able to pass the first Salesforce admin cert and my platform app builder cert. It was her teaching. But she does not brag on herself. She doesn't humble brag. She doesn't do any of those things. So anytime she deigns to post something, I try and be sure to retweet her thoughts, her accomplishments, right? To amplify her voice and mine so that we can shout out each other's praise. Are your allies on mute? Have you talked to your teammates? Or are you just assuming that they recognize or see the challenges? That was probably the most confusing part for me, was that I couldn't understand why my allies did not see that we had a challenge. If you saw the movie Hidden Figures, this movie was so amazing in so many ways, and the women were. But as amazing as they were, if the Kevin Costner character had not done what he did, the impact would not have been there. I'm going to share this little short clip with you.
So we have the vehicle's speed, the launch window, and for argument's sake, the landing zone is the Bahamas. Should be enough to figure the go, no go?
Yeah, in theory, sir.
We need to be past theory at this
We'll
point.
be able to calculate a go, no go with that information.
When exactly is that going to happen?
Catherine? Have a go at it?
That right there was the critical turning point in my mind of the whole movie, because he exhibited his confidence in her ability to lead the discussion, right? He unmuted her in ways that could never have been done. It wasn't a discussion about she's a woman, she's black, she's young, she's anything. It was just, she knows what she's doing, do it. And to me, that was such an important and poignant part of what that allyship looks like. When I presented this a year ago this summer at Witness Success, I realized that morning that my very first ally was my dad. It was one of those revelations. I hope that you had someone like that in your life that was an ally. He never made me feel like that he was sad that I wasn't a boy. He taught me how to play basketball. He taught me how to change and gap the spark plugs on my car. He said he gave me his red hair and I gave him his gray hair. So Sunday will be the 6th Father's Day without him. But his allyship is what started me on the road to becoming who I am. I call my husband my life ally. We've been married for 21 years now. And he has challenged me from the very beginning to see my own value and supported me in so many ways. He took on so many responsibilities when I went back to school full time to get that degree that I didn't finish the first time around. And when I started, with an entrepreneurial situation with HandsOn Connect Cloud Solutions. If he didn't do the things that he does, there's no way that I could do the things that I do. And like the woman in Hidden Figures, I found an ally too. So Dreamforce 2016, I guess that year, was not long after my Am I on Mute incident, right? And I had a chance to have an in-person conversation with my colleague Art. And Art Ordoki is also now with Salesforce.org, and you may have met him and know him. Amazing, amazing man. I explained to him what had happened in this meeting. He was in the meeting, right? And he, in all innocence, said, well, we don't do that, do we? I thought, okay, he doesn't even see it. So we had fun at Dreamforce. Obviously, we came home from Dreamforce. A couple of weeks went by. We had some more online meetings. And one evening I got a call from Art, and he was like, oh, Melissa, I am so sorry. We do that. I just never realized. So it was literally making him cognizant of that unconscious bias to not hear the women on our team that made him aware of it. And since then, he has been this incredible super ally. When he still worked with us, he would literally stop the conversation and say, wait, Melissa just gave you the answer. Or did you hear what Libby had to say? So he's been a super ally for women, for diverse voices. He has really gone on to own that space and to help a lot of different folks, right? So just that simple conversation is all it took to disrupt the unconscious bias that was there. I don't know if you've read Franz Johansson's The Medici Effect. It was an incredible book that I had the opportunity to meet him and hear him speak. And he talks about amazing ideas and innovation. And so one of the reasons, besides the fact that it's just the right thing to do, that diversity matters, and hearing those diverse voices is innovation, right? Each of us need to be heard individually, and every voice needs to be heard. Excuse me. I love his quote here. If you've worked in a diverse group, you know the backgrounds, the ideas, the communication may be more difficult. I share a story sometimes. Alfredo, who leads our team, speaks Spanish, of course, and he's a wonderful JavaScript developer. And he and I were working on a project late one night like this, and I was like, Alfredo, I don't understand what you're saying. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm really tired. Am I speaking Spanish? And I'm like, no, you're speaking developer. And that's worse, right? I don't understand it either. So, but those diverse voices blended together, right, are where innovation is born. And so beyond the fact that we want to do the right thing, we want to succeed. And that's what innovation starts for our success. So what will you do next week to unmute? 3 things, 3 simple things, right? So speak up for yourself. What you have to say is important. Your outlook, your perspective, your take on something, whether you're technical or not, is important. Speak up for others. If it makes you wildly uncomfortable to speak up for yourself, speak up for somebody else. And then ask others to speak up for you or for other people. Have those conversations. If they don't recognize that it's a challenge, at least you've made the effort, right? If they do recognize the challenge, you may be like I was and wind up with a phenomenal ally who supports you in so many different ways. So simple things, but next steps. I put together a little trail mix, obviously, and believe it or not, and I may need to update this and add a couple more things, but Trailhead has some great information, great modules on inclusivity and diversity and working with teams. And of course, now with the work from home information, there's a lot of that goes on too, and running inclusive meetings. So be sure to try one of those out. And I'm always happy to continue the conversation either on Twitter, or feel free to email me, either one. But are there any questions, anything you'd like to share? I always love to hear if you've had a similar experience or a challenge that you're facing that maybe we can discuss and figure out how to solve.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and accept some questions.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences, quite a number. And yet sometimes when I try to speak up for myself, then I'm accused of being aggressive. So it's trying to find the right balance, the right voice to stand up for yourself, I guess. I find it easier to stand up for other people than myself.
And so that's a great thing to do, standing up for other people, because then you've got allies as well, right?
Yeah. But this happens to women so much. Even, you know, my mother, she was the great influencer in my life, and she was a wife and a mother first. She went back to college. She got her undergrad. She got her graduate degree. I saw a working woman, and my sister saw a stay-at-home mom, and you know, my sister ended up having 5 kids, and you know, I'm the, I don't know, not career person, but yeah, I guess if you want to call it that. So it's just amazing that seeing the things that happened to my mother. You know, she would tell similar stories, and then experiencing the same things. It's like history constantly repeats itself.
Well, and that's the amazing thing, right? So, I mean, obviously, I started a family late in life. I was 41 when my daughter was born. She's 17 now. And she's like, Mom, why do men make more money than women do?
Yeah.
I'm like, honey, I don't know. I mean, I thought we solved that 40 years ago.
Yeah.
You know?
National Organization for Women, right? Yeah.
You know, I thought that was, and I guess, and especially right now with all the talk about racial diversity, right, and racial equity, and I think I was around. I remember when Dr. King was assassinated, and you know, I was old enough to know that happened, right?
Right.
And I mean, as heartbreaking as it is for me, I can imagine. I just think I thought we had solved this. You know, at least made huge inroads then, and evidently not, right?
Right. Well, like you see how Jewish memorials and cemeteries are desecrated. I'm like, my gosh, you know, the Holocaust was a big deal, and we still have people who hate Jews. What's wrong? You know, I mean, they're just people, you know?
So solving challenges every day, it's like, I don't think it's ever, I don't know, I guess it's probably like my diets, right? There is no, you know, I lose 50 pounds and then I'm done forever. You know, it's like you have to fight the same battle every single day, and which is exhausting, right? And to make that systemic change that we're not, obviously haven't seen yet. Not racially, not gender, probably not even age, and that's not a discussion. If you talk to Sherry Lovell in the ecosystem, you know, she'll have a good conversation with you about it. And that's not addressed very much, but yep. Any other tips or tricks that you all have used for?
I just wanted to say, like earlier you said that you always color your hair because you don't want anyone in the tech world to think that you're too old. And I go through the same thing because everybody tells me you look so young because I guess I'm of a different race, so people can tell how old I am. But so I was like, let's keep that illusion, because why tell everybody that I'm 52 and they'll say, oh, you're 52. What makes you so good? Like, because for somehow, like, there's certain fields where you feel like the longer you're in the field, the better you are because you know so much. But in technology, because everything changes so fast, people think the younger you are, the better you are. And I go through that even like as a developer. I was like, can I compete with, you know, or am I as good as younger developers? And, you know, in the past 3 years, I found out, yes, I am, you know, as good as younger developers. But yeah, so, but the same thing, I started graying when I was in my, you know, late 20s. So I have a ton of gray that I cover up. And I also, you know, worry about like, okay, now less so because now I'm a consultant and people, like, I'm not an employee, but I feel like, yes, age discrimination is there. And if I let it all go and be gray, then people, if they can look at me, they might choose somebody with not gray hair versus me. You know, that's the thought. I don't know.
That's a great thought. In fact, and that's interesting you would say, Bhavna, because I've thought about that several times. The age discrimination, we're so, I don't know when we got so focused on how people look, you know, instead of who they are. And that's one of those exercises that I've tried to do to introduce people, not to say like their title or their, you know, their age or their ethnicity or whatever, but who they are, right?
Yeah.
just like Kim Shapkus, to me, she's a great teacher. She's been such a sweet friend to me to help me struggle through some of the things that I've tried to learn. And to me, that's who she is. It doesn't matter what she looks like. She happens to be, gorgeous, but that's who she is. And I think that's where we probably fall short sometimes even with our friends, right?
So another thought I had recently was I'm working on my website. So I'm like, a consultant. So over there, I'm trying to put, I'm a woman-owned small business. And then I was thinking, is that a positive thing or a negative thing? Like, how would it be perceived?
Right. So and if you haven't, and I'll find it, Libby, if you've got it, would you put it in the chat? Because I put it in our Slack channel today. There is an idea on the Idea Exchange right now to have minority-owned businesses be able to search for them on the App Exchange.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic idea because that's one of the ways that I try to support other people, right? And and let me tell you, we see a lot of diversity in the community, but that diversity that we see is to some extent planned. And let me tell you why I say this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, not for the most part, but because I represented our company at Dreamforce this past year, and I went to the ISV partner gathering, cocktail party, whatever it was. And I walked into a bar full of old white men. And again, I was like, what the heck? I mean, I don't know where, Melanie Fillet from Speckett was. She wasn't there.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that there are a few women-owned, businesses and apps, but not many.
Yeah.
And they certainly weren't represented there. And I didn't know any of these men. And these were the CEOs of these companies. They were, and I thought, oh my goodness. We talk about this and we see that, we see this, but the reality is that they're all old white men. So I love the idea of having that on the App Exchange so that, obviously, we're a minority business enterprise, we're that MBE designation, because both of our co-founders are Hispanic. In fact, the closest we have to an old white guy is Larry Deckel, and he's Jewish, so I'm not even sure he counts as an old white guy, right? On the whole team. So I would love to be able to laud that, and say, if you want to support something besides the good old boy system, and I don't know if you're still recording, and it's fine if you are, because I tell people this all the time anyway, the good old boy system has worked great for hundreds of years. It's time to have the good old girl system.
Yes. Amen.
And so I really believe that I would go to a woman-owned business, someone that I had met, someone that I knew, that's a woman in our ecosystem that does a good job first, always first. They may not be the perfect fit and I may have to go elsewhere, but first, that's what I want to do. I want to support you all, in whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, when I used to work like a traditional job, I used to see that if there's an opening, you feel like not that you to compete against everybody, you have to compete against other women, because if they're going to pick, if say there are 3 spots, they might only pick 1 woman, and then so you have to compete against all the women to get that spot. And yeah, that's a really sad part, but that's how it.
Another great book, if you haven't read it, Sally Krawcheck's book. And I don't know if you saw her speak. I think she was at Dreamforce this year. Excellent book, and I can never remember the title of it. I'll find it and put it in the chat. And she speaks to that, right? But the thing is, just like any other privilege, if you get to be that woman that's at the top, if you don't bring other women with you, then you're just as bad as the old white guys, right?
Yeah.
So bringing those other underserved, own it, yes, Libby, thank you. I probably got that put for you. So that's a key, and that's a lot of what she talks about in that, because she's been in similar settings, right, in the finance industry. And you know how white and male that is, right? So, and someone made the point that government agencies do. In fact, so I'm working on an agreement right now, and that was one of the first things they asked, if we were registered with their minority business. I'm like, I don't think we are locally there, but we do have that designation. So, yep.
I started that process, but oh my God, all the websites and all the stuff they need. I'm not sure if I have patience for that.
Well, and we were lucky because our accountant is really a great help in those areas, and so she does a lot of that sort of thing for us.
Okay.
It's a good thing, and especially if that was one of the questions that Woods and Martin asked in the idea exchange was, you know, how do we designate those businesses? You know, do we let you be self-identified as a minority-owned business, or, you know, is there a certifying organization that we take as, yes, you know, because you certified with them and you're certified small business, you know, minority-owned.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you, like I say, at least get in that conversation. Yep.
Another great point that I like from your presentation is a reminder to check if others are on mute. And as someone who works in a big team, sometimes it's easier to let the most talkative people talk and let the quiet people just stay quiet. So I, as a leader, always remind myself to call out others who don't feel necessarily very comfortable to just break up the conversation and speak up, but actually giving them space within any, you know, brainstorming, solutioning, whatever that is, to actually say their opinion, even if they don't necessarily have anything else to add to the conversation, but so they know that, you know, there is a space for them to speak up. And I know I have some people on my team here, and we've definitely had those situations where there were very quiet people who never say anything. And again, it's just so easy to just pass by and say, okay, who has something to say? And those talkative always will say something, and you kind of move on, but actually pausing and saying, okay, are others on mute? Are other people actually, you know, just don't want to like break it up and feeling like they not maybe as important, but really are, really, really are.
Well, and some people are just not that aggressive, right?
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
Obviously, I don't have a shy bone in my body. I, you know, jump right in there and talk. But other people, it's difficult. They kind of wait. And I don't know if you noticed, but like nobody lets there be silence, especially in an online meeting. So you don't just go, it doesn't happen, right? And some people need that level of a pause to be able to gather the courage, find the right key to unmute themselves, right? And actually form their opinion. I mean, can you imagine Einstein in a, you know, in an online meeting? He would have never gotten a word in. So I agree. And I'm bad to call, and I'll tell people, I'll say, I will call you out, you know, because I know that you have great ideas and great thoughts. So making space for that. My husband's a teacher. And so one of the things that when our daughter was little, Dora the Explorer was a big TV show. And he said it was really good educationally because they would ask the question and then literally in the television show, they would pause and nothing would happen. Nothing would, so that you could answer the question. And so as a teacher, you know, you need to do that. And God only called one teacher in this family, and it wasn't me. But I try to make sure, you know, in making meetings inclusive, to do that, right? So to say, does anyone, you know, have any thoughts about this?
Yeah.